You're about to hear two vocals recorded in the same room with the same singer and the same microphone. And yet one of them sounds a little bit like it's recorded in a garbage can, and the other sounds more present and clear. All I changed was the position of the mic in the room and how I sing into it. Now, if you work in an untreated room like a living room, a bedroom, or garage, and you cut vocals, what you learn today might be the difference between a vocal that fights you every step of the way and one that sits nicely in the mix. I'm Keith from No Label, No Producer, No Limits.com. Let's go! I made it weird, yeah.
Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer.
Listen to this first one and how it sounds a little bit like it's sung in a bathroom or maybe a garbage can.
Light of the world.
Now what you can hear is literally the sound bouncing off the other surfaces in the room and coming back into the microphone within a few milliseconds of the original sound going into the microphone. It's like doubling, but not in a good way, because the sounds arrive back so quickly that it just takes the detail down in the sound. It smears that sound across a few milliseconds, making it less detailed. Let's compare to the other one.
Light of the world, shine of the world.
Do you hear the difference?
Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer. Light of the world, shine on me. Love is the answer.
That might be subtle to you or very obvious to you, but the level of detail is different. If you're in a mix-down process and you're trying to get an up-close, personal, intimate, detailed vocal, the bottom track would be far more difficult. It would fight you every step of the way. Now, most of the difference between those two takes is because on one of them I stood much closer to the microphone. But where we place the microphone in the room also has an effect on how good it sounds. We don't want that microphone to be in any zones where certain frequencies build up dramatically or drop off dramatically and make it sound weird. So let's take a look at how to put the microphone in the room, where to place it. If you're in a rectangular room, face the long wall and have the microphone about a third of the way back from the wall you are facing. Maybe a little bit more would be okay. Now place the mic off center between any parallel surfaces. And we don't want that microphone exactly halfway. Try to stay at least 3 feet away from anything, any corners, any walls. So you'll be using a directional mic to sing in. And the back side of the mic will reject most of the sound coming from the closest wall. Your body and your head will be in the way of some of the sound that's going to the wall behind you. And to your left and right will be the longest distance to travel for the sound to bounce off something and come back to the mic. So we've minimized the early reflections from those places. What we haven't done is reduced the early reflections from the ceiling and the floor. So let's take care of that. The first thing I would suggest is tilt the mic downward. So tilt it towards you a little bit, and that's obviously going to reject some of the sound that's coming from up above. The second thing is put a carpet on the floor. The thicker, the better. Now, the number one thing that you can do to reduce the room sound in your singing mic is to get closer to the mic. That has its own drawbacks. Let's talk about them. So when you sing closer to the mic, you can turn the gain down on the microphone, and the room sounds go with it, including the early reflections and all the flutter and the echo and the reverb. And that's in general what we want in a bad sounding room. However, there's something called the proximity effect, which means that the closer you get to a directional mic, the boomier it becomes. So you might have to roll some low end off the EQ in one place or another. And for me, I find my voice balances better if I'm 6 to 12 inches away, which is typical audio advice. But in a room that doesn't sound good, I get up closer, maybe 3 or 4 inches away, and reduce that room sound.
I just smile and say, I'll be there in no time. So I just smile and say, I'll be there in no time. I plan my getaway, gonna leave all this behind. No, I'm not gonna stay, gonna hit the road and feel the wind upon my face, my mind, instead of living this slow life. I just smile and say, I'll be there in no time.
Type home recording in the comments to get more information on the Home Recording Mentorship program. If you sing closer to the mic, you might experience what's called plosives. Plosives, just like that, where there's a puff of air that moves the element and makes a whooshing sound, which is not good. But there are fairly easy ways to avoid this. The first is just to push less air when you're singing those kinds of consonants. And the way I think about it is this. When I sing incorrectly, and it's better vocal technique, by the way, when I sing incorrectly, I stop, I halt everything, and I push air out. But if I just think about just the air in my mouth coming out and no more, no buildup of pressure here, it's a much smoother sound. So instead of pumpkin, pumpkin, it becomes pumpkin, bumpkin. Much smoother. The second way is to, and of course you should use a pop filter. The second way is to put a pencil or a pen across the airflow where the airflow is going to hit so that it gets dispersed a little bit. That's helpful. And a third way, which I use occasionally, is when I sing a particularly difficult phrase, and I've tried it 2 or 3 times and nothing else is working, I will go pumpkin, pumpkin, and block the flow of air that way rather than pumpkin, pumpkin, pumpkin. And I don't like to do that because I don't want to be thinking about that while I'm singing, but if nothing else works, I will do it. So if you sing closer to the microphone, you will get a much clearer sound. There are some trade-offs, but I definitely think it's worth it. But does singing closer to the microphone really work? Well, I did an experiment to find out. I took this rather large laundry clip, which I usually use to attach my to my, and I used it to make a clicking noise. I started out 4 inches away from the mic, about this far back from the mic, and then about 6 inches, and then about a foot, and then about 2 feet. And I normalized those tracks and lined them up, and here they are, top to bottom, short to long. And you can see already that the top microphone, the one that's very close, let's zoom in here, the sound tails off much faster. And there's a lot of noise and room reverberation in the far mics. The closer we are, the quicker that sound tails off. And here's my interpretation, is that the sound right up to here, right up to about this point, is the actual sound of the clip clicking. And if you look, we're at 0 milliseconds right here. Sound travels about maybe this far in 1,000th of a second. So it takes maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 milliseconds for the sound to come out of my mouth, hit the ceiling, and bounce back to the microphone. So our first reflection from our closest surface should be about 5 to 7 milliseconds behind this initial sound. So right here at 0, if I go out at 5, well, there I am at 7, and you can see this here, which is probably some sort of slap back. But the level on the initial track, the close track, is almost nothing at all. So in fact, let's select our early reflections area. Okay, so there's 5 milliseconds to 26 milliseconds. Now let's put a meter on the master. We're going to solo these up one by one and listen to just that portion of the track. The peak clips you'll see in green. Let's put it in a loop and play just that section on the microphone that is back 2 feet. You can see there are plenty of early reflections in there on that mic. So what was that? About -12. If we go to the mic that's 4 inches away, minus 33. So we have effectively dropped the early reflections down about 21 dB. So if we want a clear, distinct sound, we want to sing closer to the mic. It really reduces the level of early reflections and flutter echo and any kind of acoustic anomalies due to frequency imbalances. Because you see, these sound waves, they bounce back off these walls and they come back and they may be out of phase with what we're doing in certain frequencies, so it really messes with the sound. It goes without saying, your mileage may vary, your room is unique, and you should go based on what sounds the best. But what effect do these early reflections really have on the sound? Let's find out with a little experiment. I have here a white noise generator, which as you can see generates pretty much equal energy across the range of human hearing. And I have here a delay, it's off right now, but it's set for 6 milliseconds, which represents the amount of time it takes the sound to leave my face hole, hit the ceiling, and bounce back and get combined at the microphone with the direct sound of my voice going into the microphone. So what happens when these two sounds get combined? What happens is massive peaks and dips across the frequency spectrum. Take a listen. Off. Early reflections on. But to be honest, it's not as bad as all that. If you remember, I had those laundry clip sounds and I normalized those to just under 0 dB full scale. And the first early reflections when I was back 2 feet from the microphone were about 12 dB down. So let's turn this wet output down 12 dB and we should have a fairer representation of those early reflections from 2 feet back. As you can see, we still have some problems here. We're going to have a thin, weird sounding low end to the voice. Let's see how loud that is. So I'm going to pull this dry control down, and this represents just the early reflections coming back to the microphone. Now, when I sang back from the microphone only a few inches, 3 or 4 inches, these levels, these early reflection levels were down to about minus 33 dB. Let's see what that does. And so we've smoothed out pretty dramatically when we get close to the mic. Let's turn this off and on. Most of the major problems would be down here on the very low end of the voice. Let's pull the dry sound down so that we can hear how loud these early reflections are at the microphone. They go off the scale on the spectral analyzer, but we can still see them here on the output of the delay. Now we're back up at 0 so that we can see these more easily. I want you to notice what happens to these frequencies when I increase the delay time, because this 6 milliseconds is, I just sounded like Christopher Walken. 6 milliseconds only represents the bounce from the ceiling. What about the bounce from the floor, the bounce from the walls to my front and back and to the sides? Those are going to be longer. So we have a problem here at about 70 hertz and then on up. What happens if I change that to 10 milliseconds? You can see the lowest one has shifted down. We're down to about 40 hertz. What if we go to 20 milliseconds? So now the majority of the problems are happening from about 300 hertz down. If we go out to 30 milliseconds, then a lot of the problems are just really out of the range of the voice. The further the sound travels, the weaker it becomes. So those levels coming back to the microphone would be even lower than the early reflections from the ceiling. So if we pull this down to, minus 40 or something, or 45, we don't really have any kind of phase problems going on there. And this is why recording studios often have high ceilings and big rooms. It moves the early reflections away from the initial sound in terms of time, and that shifts any phase issues to lower and lower frequencies. Also, since those sounds have to travel a longer distance to bounce off a surface and back, they are weaker, and therefore they don't cause as many problems. The fastest way to get better at creating professional sounding home recordings is to have a mentor to lead you through the entire process from start to finish. Not bits and pieces, on YouTube. If you're a singer-songwriter or a duo and that's of interest to you, type home recording in the comments and I'll send you a link to my mentorship program. So, sing closer to the microphone. In a rectangular room, sing toward the long wall. Make sure you're at least 3 feet away from any surface. Use a pad on the floor or a carpet. Tilt the microphone down slightly towards you, and you'll have to experiment with which angle works best in order to maintain a clear sounding recording. Use a pop filter. Use the pencil trick to combat plosives if you need to, and get clearer, more professional sounding vocals. If you're watching on YouTube, right about now, a link will appear to another video that will help you in your recording journey. For now, I'm Keith from No Label, No Producer, NoLimits.com. Stay tuned for outtakes, where there's a puff of air that moves the elephant. I'd like to thank the Academy for awarding my song, Pumpkin Bumpkin, with 2025 Song of the Year. I accept this award with much humility.